Thanks, Chrissy, and just commence by again thanking RIU for putting on a wonderful event over the last couple of days, and to the sponsors for making it all to be possible. And to congratulate all of the investors and the people that have actually sat through up to 90 presentations over the last couple of days. There's only 5 to go, so you're almost there. What you've seen over the last 3 days is presentations that have covered pretty much every jurisdiction in Australia. I think with Canberra sort of skipping a little bit, but everywhere else you've visited. You've been overseas from Mauritania to Mali to Sweden to Nevada to Argentina, so it's really Mongolia. It's a global group of companies that you've got here and group of projects. So you've been on a bit of a journey, and the themes that you've covered quite heavily in this conference has really been on the battery metals, the electric vehicles, anode, cathode, anode precursor. But there's still the good old gold, and it's a wonderful story, and it's not dead yet. But you're all here as investors, and without you guys, our industry doesn't turn. So we need you guys to be on board and really up to speed with what it is that we're doing and how we can create value for you. I guarantee that every investor here is really looking for one thing, and that's return on their investment. And you do that in a very simple fashion. That's by finding good projects with good people and investing in the projects that are currently heavily undervalued. So Codrus, newly listed in June last year. We raised $8 million and had a great start with exploration rigs starting to turn last year. Like many people have alluded to over the last 3 days, drill rigs and assay turnaround has been the bane of our existence. The news flow that we'd like to get to you as our investors isn't as fast as we would like, and we really hope to see that change in the coming 12 to 18 months as the industry returns to a steady state post the COVID pandemic and lockdowns and border closures. Codrus is made up of 4 key projects, 3 in Western Australia and 1 over in the US. The 3 in Western Australia are clearly marked by being a little bit different in terms that they are all close to existing operating processing facilities, which is a key. So we don't need to be a large standalone project, and a small asset will never be caught stranded. At each of the projects in Western Australia, we've got active exploration programs occurring, and we're kicking off in our Bull Run project in Oregon in the US, now that the snow's starting to melt off the mountains and we can get back on the ground. So we've got a strong cash balance, we've got a dedicated team, we've got a low cash burn rate, and the money goes into the ground. We've got an attractive capital structure with Blackstone Minerals holding 45 million shares, or about 40 million shares, or about 46% of the company. And it's another part of that capital structure that's very interesting. As board and management bought in at the IPO, there was no freebies, no cheapies, so everybody's set at the same level. If you're in at the IPO, you're in at the same level as management. The key drill program that we released a little bit earlier this year was the Redgate drill program at Edgedina, about 140 kilometres north of Kalgoorlie. For a maiden program, we were very excited to have 23 metres at just under 4 grams a tonne, intersected fairly close to surface in our Porphyry West project. And we think this is an area that's going to actually come into its own light in the coming months to year. We're in a very hot area. We've got Northern Star with the Porphyry mine, they're mining there. Some of you may have listened into the Nexus talk. They've got their Crusader and Templar projects there. So as we start to look through that corridor, I think it's easy to see that there is an exploration opportunity there that's going to be in excess of 2 million ounces that is still very poorly explored. So we're moving our way through into the next drill program. We have a rig there in the next 2 weeks. We've been able to go from an embryonic idea of what's going on geologically in our first program to really starting to put some colour and context to the geology, structure and the location of the mineralisation. The original holes at Porphyry West, we had the nice mineralisation in. You can see it's quite shallow, and what we're looking at isn't to try and follow these things straight down dip. It's actually on the plunge control fold axis of the folds in the granites, and we'll be chasing this off to the north in the drilling program that's about to start. And it's really evolving that geological context. So in this next program that we do and the one that will follow that, we're actually becoming more refined in our targeting and can actually work our way into the higher grade zones of mineralisation. Interestingly, on that tenement a little bit further to the north from Porphyry West was a little zone called Porphyry North. This was drilled to within an inch of its life in the 80s by small gold explorers. There's a couple of old shafts, and when it came time to raise some money, they would go back there, drill some shallow holes, get some good mineralisation. But nobody had drilled deep underneath this or down plunge, which is what we did earlier in our first program at Red Gate. And when we looked down dip, whilst we didn't see those higher grades, we saw some really nice thick intercepts of just sub 1 gram per tonne in gold. And to us, we start to see that when we look at what's going on at Porphyry and the Nexus mineralisation, Porphyry West and up to Porphyry North, we're seeing that we've got a very large system with a lot of fluid, which was what we want for the more fertile gold systems. So we continue to follow this up and not drill close and tight around the existing mineralisation, but looking for step outs to grow scale and scope. The Edgeadina district is endowed as a fairly wide district, and we're seeing this emerge as a new area within the district. I think will have significant ounces in it. The next project that we're working on, and we're currently working on as of today, we've got a geologist in the field mapping away, is up at Middle Creek in the Nullagine district. So we're up in the Pilbara. It's a district that was explored by Millennium and before then Wedgetail, and is currently being explored for by Calidus and Novo Resources as our neighbours. And we've got a couple of processing plants that are now both operating, one to the north with Calidus and one to the southwest of our tenements in Novo Resources and the Golden Eagle Mill, which they're feeding from the Beatons Creek mine. So we're sitting in an area again with operating assets, and we're sitting on a tenement holding that has not got a single drill hole in it. So you're looking at the amount of exploration that's occurred here over the years. And I think it's fair to say that a lot of the exploration has been mildly myopic. Looking at the fault you can see at the south, the Middle Creek fault, or the fault to the north, the Blue Spec fault, working along those faults, looking for mineralisation and taking light steps off it. If we take a step out, we can see there's numerous gold trends in the historic projects that actually run up to our tenements. Once we've done the soil sampling on our tenements, we can see continuation of those trends that are untested. So we're currently in there at the moment. We're doing the sampling and the mapping on the trenches across 7 of our major projects. We've got 11 trenches that we've dug up there. That'll give us our geological context for drilling, so that when we go in and drill, we're actually drilling with a greater sense of certainty and information. And the key one on this one is, if you think of Western Australia, we're actually returning plus 5 gram rock chips, plus 3 gram rock chips from surface in areas that aren't drill tested. So I think there's wonderful opportunities for us to continue to work at Middle Creek. At Silver Swan South, we're sitting in, again, a highly prized domain directly to the north of Kanowna Belle and to the south of the Black Swan Nickel project run by Poseidon. We've got the ultramafics that run into our tenements, so we're also evaluating the potential for nickel in these areas. But at the moment, the key thing that our eye is drawn to is the opportunity in the west of our tenements to pick up some of the faults that come in and actually start to wrap around on the edge of the Scotia Dome. That's highly mineralised and fertile, obviously with Kanowna Belle being plus 5 million ounce deposit, and then working our way up to other operating mines like Gordon Sadar, and heading a little bit further out to the northwest. We've got some other operators out there as well. The ground is tightly held. Our neighbours to the south and to the west are the Northern Stars and Evolutions. And we see here we've got 2 key project areas. We've just flown some drone mag over those areas, which has really started to allow us to articulate the structure that we want to chase in there. And we'll be looking to come in there and do some drilling this year as well. And what I think is a thing that we'd like to stress is what CODRIS is doing is actually trying to make sure that we've got the right geological context to our projects before we go out and have ill-conceived drill meters put into the ground that are wasting money. We want to make sure that every dollar that we spend in the ground gives us the best bang for our buck. We then take a little bit of a journey. We move ourselves across to Bull Run over in the US. This is in Eastern Oregon. Eastern Oregon is an area that seems to be forgotten by time, especially when you actually think of the history and the very rich gold history that this part of the US has. In the 1860s and 70s, this was gold rush central. The alluvials in the area were well known about and they were mined. Sumter to the north of us was dredged as the rivers. And so the alluvials slowly ran out. And over time, as the alluvials ran out, the prospectors started to look up the hills and started to wonder, where did the gold come from? work up the hills, we start to find high-grade outcropping quartz veins with small patches of visible gold in those veins. They then started to mine into those veins. We then found that in Oregon, with the commencement of World War I, all of this artisanal mining essentially ceased, and there hasn't really been a common mining jurisdiction since. There have been little moments when people have come in and looked at it, but it's never really been a Nevada or a Utah or one of those larger jurisdictions that's quite well known and sort of just rolls off the tongue of explorers and promoters. Where we have our projects is over a small area. We've got 12 claims that we have that are under option agreement with private operators. Where they operate has been a small operating mine for the best part of 100 years. They do it as a hobby. They go in, they take 1 or 2 cuts a year of plus ounce dirt from an underground, and it's purely hobby. But we've got an option agreement to secure that ground. We can explore on it for 3 years for minimal expense, and then if we choose, we can purchase that ground at a preordained rate. We've also got 103 mineral claims that go right the way around those private claims that we own 100%. So we've ring-fenced it, so we've certainly got scale and opportunity to grow. At the end of last year, we started an IP survey in that area. The snow pushed us off the ground, but we're back there now as the snow has gone away. We've got the IP survey recommenced. We'll finish that within the next couple of weeks. We've got people on the ground about to commence doing some detailed mapping and sampling for us, and we'll be flying some drone magnetics as well. So we're looking here to really make sure that we bolster our geological data sets, such that once we actually go and put a rig on the ground, which we're also working to permit at the current time, that it'll be well articulated and drilling the best possible opportunities. We're not looking for the small high-grade veins here that the old timers have been chasing. For them, that's all that's worthwhile. We're looking at a much larger system with some nice intrusives that are shot through with pyrite that will hopefully, with our IP surveys, give us some nice chargeability anomalies to go in and target. Newmont did a campaign in here in the 80s and drilled over 20 metres at plus 3 grams, but in the 80s for Newmont that was not meeting the hurdle. So it was overlooked and they moved away. So we're really coming into an area that's not underexplored, it's pretty much unexplored. So we've got active work schedules on all of our Australian projects that we've already mentioned so far, and we're up on the ground and running now after the winter season in the US. So we're busy on the ground. We've got our geos fully dedicated to what we do, and we'll be trying to ramp up that news flow as fast as we can to keep our investors well ahead of our developments. But one of the key things about the company, and I think makes it an exceedingly attractive investment for our investors at the moment, and especially new investors, is where we physically sit. Very tight capital structure, 75 million shares on issue, $5 million in the bank with a market cap of $7 million. So the EV is very low. So from this perspective, we are super leveraged to exploration success. Once we start to get out some good results, we can see that we'll actually be able to see significant uplift in the share price. And significantly, just harking again, we're still sitting on $5 million in the bank, so we don't need to go and rattle the tin and raise any more anytime soon. So in summary, you're looking at a really focused gold explorer that has the ability and the capacity, and we are looking at new projects as we explore on our existing projects. We do have a bent for base metals, especially copper. We've got a circa 15-year history within the group of looking at base metal, especially copper assets. And we're looking to move those forward and join them in with our gold profile. So we've got a pipeline of projects to work forward. So we're well positioned, and we thank you for your time.
That was that. Well done. Thanks very, very much.